Decoding the perfect time to establish an LLC on this episode of Legit Podcast Pro. Are you a creator who has laid awake at night wondering how to take that next big step towards professionalism and protection? Ever found yourself lost in the alphabet soup of LLCs, DBAs, and EINs? Well, you're in luck. Today's episode is your lifeline. Welcome back to Legit Podcast Pro. I am Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and today we're diving deep into the world of limited liability companies, decoding when it's the right time for you as a creator to turn that passion into a business with an LLC. So buckle up. It is time to navigate this legal labyrinth. Welcome back to another episode of Legit Podcast Pro. This is your go-to resource for content creators that are looking to elevate their game and navigate the legal seas of content creation. So when is the right time to establish that LLC? Well, let's just first off go to a quick ad message and let you know. This episode is brought to you by Easy Legal Forms and Templates for Podcasters. If you're a legit podcast pro, you want to protect your intellectual property and ensure that content is used appropriately. Easy Legal Forms and Templates for Podcasters can help. Our form store at podcastlawforms.com provides a variety of legal forms and templates specifically for podcasters, including host and co-host agreements, DMCA takedown notices, release forms, and much more. With these easy downloadable templates, you can customize the forms you need in just minutes. Plus, our affordable bundle and a la carte pricing makes it easy to get the protection you need without breaking the bank. Visit podcastlawforms.com today. Easy, legal, affordable forms and templates for podcasters. podcastlawforms.com. All right, so let's just jump right in with some of the basics. First off, what is an LLC? Well, an LLC, or a limited liability company, is a legally defined and recognized business structure that combines the pass-through taxation of being a partnership or a sole proprietorship with the limited liability of being a corporation. Now, why might you as a creator want to consider forming an LLC? Well, there are a handful of real advantages that you really should consider. First of all, liability protection. It can protect your personal assets if your business gets sued. The second thing is tax flexibility. LLCs aren't subject to the same corporate income tax and can choose how they want to be taxed, that pass-through taxation that we talk about. Third thing, an LLC can be a useful mechanism to establish ownership and management structures. And fourth, the LLC can be useful if you are looking to finance the operations of the company by selling off membership interests, equity in the company to investors. And finally, it just boosts your credibility and professionalism in the eyes of potential sponsors or partners. After all, people prefer to do business with businesses that feel more stable and reliable. And having those letters LLC after your company name can help. So just to clarify, an LLC is one of many business structures. Others include sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, and each of these has benefits and drawbacks. But today, we're zeroing in on LLCs because really, for most creator businesses, LLCs are going to be the entity structure of choice. So now that we understand what an LLC is, let's dive into what you should consider when figuring out the right time to establish an LLC as your creative venture. Risk is, of course, an important factor. The type of content you're creating and the degree of interaction with the public or other businesses that you have can have associated legal risks. Forming an LLC can protect your personal assets, your house, your cars, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, those kinds of things from these kinds of risks. What kinds of risks, you might ask? Well, how about libel claims from people you've been talking about on your show, or privacy rights claims? Copyright and trademark infringement issues can come up. And what about claims coming from your co-hosts or from your team or your sponsors? And don't forget that audience. You never know whom you're going to offend or who's going to start pointing fingers when you say or do something controversial on your show. Now, financial readiness is another significant consideration. Forming and maintaining an LLC does, of course, incur some costs, and they vary widely from state to state. So you'll want to make sure to check your home state's costs before making this decision. For example, here in California, $800 annual minimum tax for every LLC. So that may weigh in against getting an LLC, and maybe you get some insurance instead. But if you're in a state where it's very inexpensive, then it might make sense to do the LLC. But the important thing is that you evaluate whether your podcasting revenue is on track to justify these expenses, or are you on trajectory to doing that soon. But please, it is not just about cost. That liability protection can be important, of course, especially if you're doing the kinds of content that might be considered riskier than others. If you're doing news, political, public affairs kind of programming, or true crime, or other kinds of shows where you and your guests are talking about other people, the risks can be a little bit higher. And if you have more assets personally that you want to protect, it's important too. So you've got to do this cost-benefit analysis in order to figure it out. Now, also consider your plans for scaling and growth. If you aim to grow your podcast into a larger media venture, hire a team of people, contractors, staff, employees, or if you're collaborating with other creators, then establishing an LLC might be the right move to facilitate growth. Having the company be the employer or contracting party can make a lot of sense in many situations. Or if you're going to co-own the project with partners, having that LLC is a great way that you can allocate the percentages or portions of ownership, management responsibilities, control, and to address a lot of those what happens if questions. What if someone wants to quit or becomes disabled or dies, or you need to bring in more capital to grow your show? All of those what ifs. If you do it right, this is where the LLC structure can operate as the podcast prenup that I'm always harping. And then we have the tax benefits. Now, this will depend on your individual tax situation, but an LLC could offer substantial advantages. Companies can often deduct as business expenses more and different things than an individual can. So it pays to look at this carefully, talk to your tax professionals about whether an LLC makes sense from that perspective. And once money starts coming in, you're certainly going to want some kind of an entity in place. So if you're planning a monetization strategy, this is an important consideration as well. And finally, if you are planning out an exit strategy, you're going to want to sell your podcast or business someday, or someone's going to need to take it over. It's going to be so much easier if it's all housed in an LLC. So once you've evaluated these considerations and decided to proceed with forming an LLC, there are a few steps that you'll need to take. Now, the fastest, most streamlined way to get an LLC set up is to hire a lawyer like me to handle it for you. Fees for this kind of thing can cost anywhere from around $1,000, depending on the lawyer's experience and the complexity of your business and a few other considerations. Or you could use one of those online LLC vending machine websites. You know, the ones with Zoom or Rocket in their names? Now, personally, I think this is risky. Some things still do require some human judgment and consideration. I mean, imagine you're walking along and there's a machine, a big box with a hole in the bottom, and it says haircuts, $1. Insert head here. Are you going to trust this machine with that? Now, you might get a very nice haircut, or you might wind up missing an ear. Or you could do the legal yourself, the way I show you inside my Easy Legal for Podcasters program. Firstly, you'll need to register your LLC with the state. It typically involves filing articles of organization, paying a filing fee, and then it's crucial to create an operating agreement. Even if you're a single member LLC, this is important because this is the document that outlines how the LLC will be run. Then you get an EIN, an employer identification number from the IRS. That's required for tax purposes. And open your bank accounts, move your online accounts into the name of the company, start paying for them out of that bank account, a debit card or something like that. Move the physical and intellectual property assets into the company, and you are off and running. Oh, and then each year you'll also need to file some kind of a statement of information with the state, and of course a tax return as well. Now, that's usually pretty basic for small podcast LLCs and the like, but this is something you need to think. So, to recap, there are several key considerations when deciding the right time to establish an LLC for your creative podcast or YouTube channel or whatever. Understanding the risks involved, your financial readiness, plans for growth, potential tax advantages. And it's not a decision to take lightly. Seeking professional legal and tax advice is always recommended. But it's also not to be taken off the table. One of the biggest mistakes I see creators making is waiting too long. With the right planning and understanding, establishing an LLC can be an easy and affordable way to bump up your company's legitimacy, your podcast's legit status. And it's how you become a legit podcast pro. So I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. That wraps up today's episode. Thanks for joining me. And remember, your journey to becoming a legit podcast pro is a marathon, not a sprint. So just keep on keeping on. One foot in front of the other is how you make progress. And if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me with your questions and comments and visit my home on the web, gordonfiremark.com, to find out more about my services and products. I'll see you again next time.